Good morning, everyone. I hope we have some gamers in the stage, because today I'll be talking about what it means to achieve like real mainstream adoption through gaming in Web3. So briefly, I've been in crypto for about 10 years now. Formerly, I was at Hash, which is the biggest crypto VC in Asia, managing over $1 billion in AUM. And I've invested in over 40 gaming companies at Hash. And recently, I've become the co-founder at Decentralized Gaming Ventures and chief investment officer, where we work with great talents from companies like NetEase, Garena, Riot, Bandai, and also Scopely, where we acquire gaming studios, we license great IPs, and we create IP-based games and game studios. So recently, a lot of great games have been seeing significant commercial success. One of my favorite games, League of Legends, Derby, Pretty Derby, Elden Ring, Diablo 4, all of these games have been generating billions and billions of dollars in revenue. But unfortunately, in Web3, GameFi has been struggling a lot to get real traction. And I think that there are several reasons for this. So the first is that a lot of game builders are trying to target Web3 native users. By coming from Web2 to Web3, they think that a lot of Web3 users are naturally very interested in gaming. But historically, we've seen that that's not true. And in fact, there's not a lot of Web3 native gamers. Some metrics suggest that there are about 1 million total Web3 native gamers in the market. So it is really difficult for new games to come out to target such a small user base and try to become big from that user base. And thirdly, it's really difficult to curb the speculative, like degen-like speculative nature of crypto native users, because they often go from one game to another based on what yield the game provides. So if they buy a certain NFT, or if they buy a certain game token, and they feel like the token is not generating a lot of yield or generating a lot of revenue for them, then they sell it and they move on to the next game. And lastly, to invite a lot of these speculative gaming users into their game, a lot of crypto games make the mistake of trying to do an inflationary model where they give tokens away. But what happens when you do that is that as the token price goes down, the users lose interest in playing the game. So at the end of it all, the token price goes down, the metrics of the games goes down, and the games are left with no users, and they eventually fail. So a typical GameFi model looks like this. Like new user comes in, they go to a new game to get game rewards, but then the token value drops because a lot of the users are getting these token incentives. And when that happens, the game's user activity drops significantly, and as a result of it, the game dies. And this goes against a conventional game economy, because in a normal game, it is really important to retain users by giving things away. So in a very popular game, you'll often see that the game is trying to give items or new maps or new quests away to users. But in Web3, you cannot do this because a Web3 game by nature should be deflationary. What I mean by that is, in a Web3 game, you cannot give things for free because people are buying NFTs and people are buying tokens to get those things. So in a Web2 game where you're supposed to give things away to retain users, in Web3 you cannot do that. So if there's no retaining metrics or retaining modules, then what you have to do is you need to give something away to retain the users that purchase your NFT. And as a result of it, they give the tokens away because that's the easiest thing to do. And also, in a way, it's like the laziest thing to do. But when you do that, then the users lose interest and go to the next game. And I think that Star Trek Fleet is a very good example that shows what a commercially successful game should do that Web3 games are not doing. So Star Trek Fleet Command is actually one of the most popular games we've seen in Web2. This has been very popular for over 7 years now, and they're generating billions of dollars in revenue. And what Star Trek does is that every time a new user comes in, they give new items, they give new packages and programs so that the users get more excited to play it. And as a result of it, over a 7-year period of time, their user retention rate has only gone up, and the total number of users has only gone up since then. And this is because they focus a lot on user acquisition and to try to bring new users into the Web2 games. But in Web3, a lot of Web3 gaming studios don't focus on user acquisition at all. So user acquisition is very important in a game because every game genre has a different consumer base. One gamer may like fighting game, one gamer might love Forex, but not every gamer loves every game genre. So when a new game comes out, typically half of the budget is spent on user acquisition in a conventional gaming industry. But in Web3, for some reasons, a lot of gaming studios don't believe that UA is important. And they end up not spending any money in UA. And without UA, what happens is that in Web3, the profile of gamers in every game is the same. So speculative, like degen user, jumps from one game to another, and as a result of it now, at the late stage of GameFi, we end up with basically no users in the GameFi market, with a lot of GameFi projects being dead. So a typical GameFi user flow looks like this. Axie becomes super hot, and hundreds of thousands of DAU come into Axie. Then they move into the next hot game like Gods Unchained, where they see a lot of users. And then Gods Unchained moves to a new game, and a new game, and a new game. And so every game end up not having any users at the end of 2 or 3 months. And the lifetime value of these games compared to a normal Web2 game is disastrously low. Like if you compare to like Star Trek that I showed, their LTV of the game is something like multiple years. And their game right now, after 7 years, is peaking. But a lot of Web3 games peak after a few weeks of being launched. And this happens because, first, games don't spend anything on UA, so new users are not coming into GameFi. And second, Web3 games that are designed for Web2 gamers are just simply too hard. So in a typical Web3 game user flow, a user finds a new game and sees that NFTs are required. So what they have to do is that they have to buy the NFT, right? So they go to centralized exchange, they try to buy ETH or Bitcoin or whatever to buy the NFT. Then they have to create MetaMask and buy ETH and transfer MetaMask. So all these things are very new to gamers. And even though the game quality is excellent, a Web2 gamer, a typical Web2 gamer is never going to go through this process to actually play the game because there's so many great Web2 games out there. So a Web3 game shouldn't be this complicated for the users. And if it remains this complicated, then no regular gamer is going to come into Web3. It's just never going to happen, right? So my personal thesis is that don't target Web3 gamers, but instead try to build real games for real gamers and introduce Web3 features to them, and try to use Web3 for features that actually make sense in a real game, rather than just putting Web3 features on a game and calling it a Web3 game. Because when you do that, then no user can actually adopt and use and play the game. And if you do it in a right way, where you're introducing Web3 features to gamers, then eventually you can bypass the very inefficient traditional publishers in the gaming industry that take 60 to 70% of your revenue and the margin and basically maximize the revenue and profit for your game. So in my opinion, how a Web3 game should actually work is that a game studio develops a game, releases it on Apple App Store or Google Play, and acquires users, and spend money on acquiring users, but at the same time, use a lot of Web3 elements to actually acquire the users. And then you introduce Web3 features to them. So as an example, Web3 features include things like governance. So in a Web2 game, users get no say in where the game development direction goes. So if Web2 gamers can actually say, oh, Diablo 4, I actually don't like some of these features. Can you change it in the next season or 6 months from now? They can actually do that through Web3 because each NFT holder can have that proof of ownership and governance, right? And what this allows is you can build a gamer community that actually appreciates Web3 features instead of Web2 gamer community that is unable to come into Web3 game because it's gated by all these Web3 features that they just cannot use. So why is Web3 actually needed in gaming, right? There's four things that I'm thinking about. The first thing is untamperable proof of ownership. So if you're playing a game like Counter-Strike or League of Legends, and you buy these items, and sometimes people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in buying an item, but you don't own it. And you would ideally want to own it permanently because you spend a lot of money for it, right? So blockchain as a decentralized ledger is perfect for the proof of ownership. And then you have untamperable proof of governance. So every NFT holder can actually contribute to the game development and also contribute to the direction of the game by holding their NFT, and the game developer cannot take that away from you. They cannot take away the governance right that you have. And the third is efficient payments. So crypto, stable coins, all these things allow games to much more efficiently incentivize users for example, user-generated content. So if you create a map for a game, or if you create an item for the game, then it's easy for the game to reward you for that. And lastly, as a result of all of this, you get a very transparent reward distribution system. So reasons for Web3 in gaming, based on the previous slide, is that the first is you can reduce user acquisition costs through decentralized payment systems and direct community access. And what you mean by this is it's much easier in Web3 to convince your friends to join this game through maybe Telegram wallets or some kind of affiliate sort of crypto programs, and you can actually bring your friends into the game. That's the first thing, which we saw through Axie. And the second thing is it's possible to empower users by allowing them to dictate where the game direction goes, so that when new content come out, the users actually have a say. And this makes it much more exciting for the gamers, especially die-hard gamers. And the third and the fourth is that you reduce the dependence on publishers that usually take anywhere between 50 to 80% of your profit margin for publishing your game in different markets. And lastly, the share economy that Web3 allows disrupts the publishing world. And this is not a small market. So the whole game market is 200 billion, but then the virtual goods market alone is 67.5 billion. So the proof of ownership, the items that I talked about, that market alone is worth $67 billion. So if you plug this in a popular game like Star Trek, users will be able to vote on new contents. Users can vote on game development directions. Users actually own the items that they purchase permanently. And users may also earn rewards if they play well. And this actually enhances Web2 gaming experience instead of giving them a whole new experience that is difficult for them to adapt to. So this is what I do at Decentralized Gaming Ventures. So we acquire game studios, we license IPs, we put them together to develop IP-based game, which allows us to reduce user acquisition cost significantly, and it allows us to go to the market much more efficiently. So we create games based on anime, based on movies, based on TV shows, etc. And that allows us to target a certain genre of gamers or niche of gamers much more efficiently. And we also have different tech that allows us to go to the market. For example, Telegram wallet, MPC wallet that allows users to come into Apple App Store and use the game and have a wallet created without them even knowing. So all this tech allows us to revolutionize the publishing world. And if you're building great games, or if you're trying to build great games with IPs, please let me know. And yeah, you can talk to me after the talk. Thank you.